Hello, for lovers. For today, we will discuss joint arrangement. And dito sa topic na to, we will integrate what we have learned from your other subtopics, no? As well, or topics, as well as yung other subjects. Okay? Kaya, sinadya ko na ilagay sa medyo dulong part, no? So, yung napag-usapan natin before na mga, kunyari, equity method, fair value method, and then you have your cost method. Magagamit din natin dito. Tapos yung mga discussion natin sa business combination and consolidated FS na under or overvaluation, we will also use here. And yung mga ibang format ng computation that we have discussed in your partnership liquidation, magagamit din natin dito. Okay? So, to give you a background lang muna, so tingnan muna natin ano ba yung nangyari sa mga standards, no? Ano yung, paano siya nag-evolve? Okay, so before, we have a standard na PAS pala, no? Kasi accounting tayo. So, pass number 31, and yung title nito is Investment in Joint Venture. Investment in Joint Venture, and there are, so itong standard na to, existing ito before January 1 of 2013. Okay, so before January 1 of 2013 po yan. And there are three types of joint venture. Okay, so meron tayong JCA, meron kang JCO, and, okay, nagutom ka, no? You have your JC. So, jointly controlled asset, jointly controlled operation, jointly controlled entity. Okay? And how do you account jointly controlled asset? Later, mababanggit naman natin. Jointly controlled operation, mababanggit din natin. Pero dito lang ako mag-focus sa JC, jointly controlled entity. So, how do you account? So, yung default na accounting ng jointly controlled entity is actually, okay, line by line consolidation. Line by line consolidation. Other term is proportionate consolidation. So, dito yung time na merong benchmark treatment as may alternative. So, benchmark treatment is line by line consolidation or proportionate consolidation. Okay, alternative is one-line consolidation, otherwise known as the equity method. And bakit tinawag na one-line consolidation yung equity method? Kasi nga, isang account lang mini-maintain mo, and for every changes dun sa equity ng joint venture mo, nire-record mo yung share mo doon. Okay, so ganun siya, no? And of course, starting 2013, so meron na tayong PFRS number 11. Yung title naman nito is Joint Arrangement. Medyo na bago, no? So, this is starting January 1 of 2013. Okay. And ngayon, yung joint arrangement ay classified na into two. Okay, so unang-una, you have your joint operation followed by joint venture. Aha. So, kung mapapansin mo, dati-rate yung pinakamalawak yung scope is joint venture. So, JCA, JCO, JC. Pero ngayon, yung joint venture is just a type of joint arrangement. Okay? So, ganoon yung nangyari. Tapos dito sa joint venture na to, pag silent ito, normally ina-account natin ito using yung equity method. Okay? So, normally using equity method ito. No? Pag silent, pag silent. Kasi in your separate FS, as mentioned by your past 27, you can use equity, cost method, or fair value method. So, parang yung isang mapapansin lang natin dito pa lang okay, is nawala yung line-by-line consolidation or proportionate consolidation. So, nawala. Parang nawala siya. Okay. And itong dalawang ito, no? Yung JCA and JCO, nag-combine yan. Parang yun na yung joint operation natin ngayon. So, later on, kung ano yung discussion natin on how to account JCA and JCO, you'll just combine that one and that's your joint operation. Okay. Yung JC naman, parang yung pumalit is yung joint venture. Yun nga lang, more on equity method lang. More on equity method lang. Okay. And then, of course, yung isang relevant dito is PFRS 4 SME. Okay, particularly dun sa section number 15. Section 15. Again, if you still recall, sabi ko, normally yung mga nasa SME ay mga old requirements sa full PFRS. Okay, kaya sa PFRS for SME, yung tawag dito is joint venture. So, joint venture. And joint venture is classified into 3. Okay? JCA, JCO, pareho lang doon, no? And then, meron tayong JC. Nga lang yung JC na to, you can use naman cost method, okay, or cost model, fair value method or fair value model, and you have your equity method or equity model. Okay? So, ganun. You will choose from these 3. And may mga additional requirements which we will be discussing later on. Okay. So, ganito na lang yung basic concepts ng JCA. Yung JCA na yan, Jointly Controlled Asset, parang ano lang yan, no? So, basically, okay, yung jointly controlled ninyo ay yung asset. Parang ganun lang yung madaling explanation yan, no? So, parang co-ownership of asset lang yan. And pag sinabing JCO, di ba? So, ano yung kinokontrol ninyo? That's the operation. Okay? Unlike yung isa na meron kayong kinokontrol na entity. So, parang ganun yung, sa madaling sabi, ganun yung itsura niya. Pero, sabi ko nga, mamaya, mas pag-uusapan pa natin ng mas malalim. Mas malalim. Okay? So, yun yung parang naging history, no? Naging history from PAS 31, naging PFRS 11, and actually there are other standards that was revised. Okay? May mga ibang standard na na-revise. Ano yung mga ibang standard na na-revise? Yung PAS 28, di ba? So, PAS 28, okay. Naging ano na siya, no? Investment. Nung nawala na, yung PAS 31, yung PAS 28, ni-revise na yan, investment in associate, and okay, joint venture. So, ina-account na yon, ina-account na ito using the equity method. So, parang default is equity method. Of course, yung mga kabatch nito, mga standard is yung PFRS 9 ninyo, PFRS 10, PFRS 11, and PFRS 11 na pala to, no? PFRS 12 na. Yan yung mga kabatch ng mga standards. Okay. So, now, syempre, we will erase first yung mga nasa board, no, para ma-discuss natin ng malalim yung PFRS number 11, which is joint arrangement. So, joint arrangement. So, ano nga ba yung joint arrangement na yan? So, yung arrangement na joint, di ba? Arrangement na joint. Okay. So, PFRS number 11, joint arrangement. So, anong sinasabi nitong joint arrangement na ito? Okay. So, basahin na lang natin yung definition as provided in your PFRS 11. Sabi niya, joint arrangement is an arrangement of which two or more parties have joint control. So, arrangement of two or more parties na merong joint control. So, we can say na pag sinabing joint arrangement, ilan dapat yung parties? Two or more. Hindi pwedeng mag-isa. Kaya nga joint eh. So, at least two parties ay merong joint control. Okay? So, merong joint control. Ngayon, saan natin makikita yung joint control na yan? So, by definition, joint control is the contractual okay, nag-shortcut. No? Contractual agreed sharing. Contractual agreed sharing. Okay? So, as defined din sa handout ninyo, di ba? Sharing of control of the arrangement, which exists only when decisions of the relevant activities requires the unanimous consent of the parties sharing control. Okay? So, normally, pag sinabing joint control, anong titingnan natin? So, contractual, agreed sharing. So, meron kang contract. Di ba? Merong contract. And dun sa contract na yun, may agreement nga kayo na you will share control over yung relevant activities. Di ba? So, may contract. Ano pa po yung mga keywords natin? Okay, you have your unanimous consent. Okay? Unanimous consent. Saan? Yung sa unanimous consent ninyo, doon sa relevant activities. Okay? Unanimous consent doon sa relevant na activities. So, first is dapat may contract. Okay? And then, syempre, no, yung control na yan, contractually agreed sharing. So, hindi pwedeng mag-isa lang yung may control. Kasi pag isa lang yung may control, that would fall under your PFRS 3, okay? Or PFRS number 10. So, syempre, kung nagkaroon ka na ng control, mag-isa mo, that's under your business combination. And later on, you will consolidate that under PFRS number 10. Okay? So, ganun na. So, at least 2 or more. And may contractual agreed sharing of course, meron kayong yun nga, agreed sharing or contractual agreed sharing of control. Okay? Meron kayong unanimous consent dun sa mga relevant activities. And when you say unanimous consent, anong ibig sabihin ng unanimous consent? It prevents one party from acting unilaterally. Okay? Or ibig sabihin yan, para magkaroon ng isang decision, di ba? Kung anumang decision yan, investing decision, financing decision, or yung decision na yan ay syempre makaka-apekto doon sa, it will affect your relevant activities. And when you say relevant activities, ano ibig sabihin ng relevant activities? Yan yung activities that significantly affect, okay? Affect the returns of the entity, di ba? Or of the arrangement. Not necessarily the entity, but the arrangement. Okay, so dapat may unanimous consent. So ano nga ba yung unanimous consent? So pinipigilan nga niya yung iisang party that will act unilaterally. Yung solo flight lang siya. Okay, so ibig sabihin nun, kung may decision na papasukin yung arrangement, yung mga parties na yan, dapat sana lahat sila. Okay, pero in some instances, not necessarily na lahat sila ay okay, magde-decide, no? Or kailangang mag-approve, no? Kailangan ng approval nila. Alright? So, yun bang unanimous consent? Is that the same dun sa unanimous decision? Is that the same sa unanimous decision? Yung unanimous consent? Obviously, so words pa lang na ginamit, magkaiba. No? Kasi normally, yung unanimous decision, okay, we normally hear that pag may mga boxing or sa MMA, right? Okay? Naririnig natin na, and the winner by unanimous decision, Darrell, no? Asuncion. Diba? Ganun siya, no? Okay. Pero iba yon. Iba yon, no? Kasi diba, yung unanimous consent, concept ng unanimous decision is normally 3 yung judges doon eh. Diba? And pag sinabing unanimous decision, dapat all 3 judges are in favor of one particular na fighter. Ganun yung unanimous. Pero, dito sa joint arrangement, pag sinabing unanimous consent, not necessarily na lahat sila. Not necessarily na lahat. And later on, we will expound that one, no? Okay. Sa ano kasi, sa boxing, no? So, or MMA for that matter. So, syempre, 3 lagi sila. 3, no? And hindi mo naman pwedeng sabihin na, ikaw judge number 1 kasi ikaw yung pinakamataba, ikaw yung pinakamalaki yung portion ng decision. Ikaw naman judge number 2, since ikaw yung pinakamaliit, yung decision mo would represent 20% lang. So, walang gano'n, no? So, yung tingin sa 3 judges na yun ay pantay-pantay. Okay? Unlike sa isang company na you can divide yung mga, yung company, no, in terms of ownership. So, ganun, yung tatandaan natin, okay, sa joint arrangement. So, pag na-identify natin kung merong joint arrangement, next step is to determine, okay, the type of the arrangement. And there are 2 types of arrangement. Types of arrangement. So, ano yung dalawang klase ng joint arrangement? Actually, nakita na natin yan kanina. You have your joint operation and you have your joint venture. So, joint operation, joint venture. Okay. And for sure, alam ko, binasa mo yung definition ng joint operation at saka joint venture, no? At first glance, if you'll check the definition, almost the same. Almost the same. Okay? Kaya lang, kung titingnan mong maigi, merong difference. So, syempre, rights, after ng rights na yun, okay, may konting difference na. May konting difference na. Okay? So, dito sa joint operation, may makikita ka, rights to what? Rights to what? Sa joint operation, meron ka daw rights to the assets of the arrangement and then meron kang obligation for the liabilities of the arrangement. Tama ba? So, rights to assets and obligation for liabilities, okay, of the arrangement. Pag nakita mo yon, that is a joint operation. Okay. How about yung isa? So, joint venture. So ano namang napansin mo sa definition ng joint venture? Sabi niya dyan, meron kang right naman saan? Sa net assets. Okay? Meron kang rights sa saan? Sa net assets. Magkaiba ba yon? Yes, magkaiba sila. Okay? Kasi rights to specific assets, diba? So, pwedeng may mga specific assets na ikaw lahat yung may right doon. Okay? And ganun din sa liabilities. However, dito sa joint venture, yung rights mo lang is dun sa difference, no? Net assets, assets after deducting yung liabilities. Okay? So, yun yung gusto kong i-note ninyo, no? But take note, sino yung may right? Sino yung may obligation? That is the parties. That's the parties, no? So, pag merong definition dyan sa materials ninyo, yung joint operation and joint venture, I want you to underline yung parties. Parties, okay? Critical yan. The parties, okay? Tapos ito, rights or obligation to liabilities. Rights to assets and obligation for liab. And then underline mo din sa baba yung right to net assets. Right to net assets. Kasi very, very, sabihin na lang natin, critical yan. Napaka-critical yan in distinguishing the two. Okay. So mamaya makikita natin, no, bakit importante yung parties na yan. Parties na yan. Okay. And of course, pag parties yung pinag-usapan, so parties, okay, pag parties yung pinag-usapan, o dito, anong tawag sa parties ng joint operation? So, simple lang naman yan. Dugtungan mo lang ng joint operator. Okay? And then, ito naman, tawag sa parties ay joint venturer. Okay? So, joint venturer. Ayan, joint venturer. Okay, so before we'll discuss yung sinasabi nilang separate vehicle, no? So, bago natin pag-usapan yung separate vehicle, so, ilagay nga natin ito dito. Okay. Paano ba yun? So, kunyari, ito, asset less liabilities equals net assets. So, ganito, no, sa joint operation. So, pag merong right yung party sa assets and meron silang obligation sa liabilities, di ba? Pag ganito yung scenario, okay, tawag natin dyan ay joint operation. Pero kung yung right mo naman ay dito sa net asset, ito naman yung joint venture. Okay? Ganun yung joint venture. So, tawag dito, joint operators, ng mga parties, joint ventures. Now, another concept dito sa PFRS 11 is yung tinatawag natin na separate vehicle. And when you say separate vehicle, okay, hindi po necessary na yun yung hiwalay na sasakyan. Diba? So, hiwalay na sasakyan. Hindi necessary na hiwalay na sasakyan. Yan. Okay? So, ano ba yung separate vehicle na yan? Parang ganito yan, no? So, kung idodrawing sana natin, no? Idodrawing sana natin, ganito. Mas malawak siya. Mas malawak yung scope niya as compared doon sa tinatawag natin na entity. And by definition nga, yung separate vehicle is a separately identifiable financial structure. Separately identifiable financial structure. Okay? Financial structure. So, kung idodrawing natin yung separate vehicle, ganito lang siya. Ito yung separate vehicle, mas malawak yung coverage dun sa entity. Okay? Entity. So, gano'n, no? Kaya yung entity is considered to be a separate vehicle. Kaya lang, when you say separate vehicle, pwedeng, ano pa yan, no? Recognized na company yan under our law or pwedeng hindi po. Okay? Or ganito, no? Si Sir Rex, ano kaya yung mga separate vehicle niya? So, we're not talking about his car, no? Ano yung separate vehicle niya? Parang possible sources of income niya. Yeah, so, syempre, from publishing yung mga books, tama? Being an author, okay? Ano pa? Being a TikToker, okay? So, yung isa pang source of income niya. What else? Being a teacher, okay? So, yun yung mga, we can say na, pwedeng different, okay, separate or mga separate vehicle niya, mga source of income. Okay? Parang before naalala ko, no? Nung nasa audit firm ako, that time, actually bago ako mag-review kasi, no? Or during the review, okay? And syempre bago ako pumasok sa audit firm, no? So naghiwalay kami ng job ko, no? And habang nasa audit firm ako, may nag-chat sa akin. May nag-chat sa akin na magandang dalaga, no? Tapos sabi niya, open daw ba ako sa dinner? Okay, open daw or okay lang daw ba na mag-dinner kami? So imagine, no? So andun ako sa Makati, sabi niya okay lang daw, dadayo siya, no? So from Quezon City, pupunta daw siya ng, okay, Makati for a dinner. And sabi ko, Lord, ito na ba? Ayun, no? Akala ko siya na. Okay? Kaya lang, no? Hindi pala kasi sabi niya, open-minded ka ba? Okay. And well, open-minded naman tayo, no? However, nung dumating na yung mga kasamahan niya, okay? Siyempre, diba? Power. Yayaman tayo, power. Gano'n, no? That's normal. Okay, so okay lang naman, walang kaso, no? However, pinipilit nila ako na tapos sinasabi na, ay si ganito, lawyer, nag-resign sa trabaho, pumunta dito yumaman. Okay? Or si ganito, engineer, umalis sa trabaho, 'di ba? Dito yumaman. Mga gano'n, no? Tapos parang sinasabi sa akin na, oops, kalimutan mo na yung pagiging CPA mo. Okay, umalis ka na dyan. Okay, punta ka na lang dito. Dito ka yayaman. So parang nainis ako kasi syempre nagpuyat ako, naghirap ako para maging certified public accountant tapos biglang sasabihin lang na parang umalis ka na dyan, dito ka na lang. 'Di ba? Eh kung sana sinabi sa akin na fine, you have an existing vehicle, you have an existing source of income being a CPA. Okay? Then if we can add, 'di ba? You will join sa amin, 'di ba? Mas yayaman ka pa. Power. Eh kung ganun yung sinabi, then baka nagustuhan ko pa, baka naki-join ako. Alright? So ganun yung yung separate vehicle. Anyways, okay? Sige, i-apply natin dito, no? So separate vehicle, okay. Or ito, example na lang, additional example ng separate vehicle. Kunyari, ganito. Merong event ng BTS. Kunyari lang, may event ng BTS. Ewan ko kung ng BTS. Ngayon, yung event nila would be good for 1 week. Kunyari, good for 1 week. Okay. So, tapos iisa lang yung venue, no? So, tapos syempre, ang daming mga tao. Okay. And, inisip natin is we will establish a booth dun sa labas and we will sell yung mga merchandise ng mga ng BTS, okay, for 1 week. Ayun. So, syempre, not necessarily na we will establish a separate company for that purpose, di ba? So, yung gagawin lang natin is we will pool our resources, we will join our resources, bibili tayo ng merchandise, tapos ibebenta natin. Okay, dun sa event na yun. And after ng event na yun, okay, mawawala din. Di ba? Matatapos na din yung arrangement natin, so wala na. Paghahatian na lang natin kung may profit tayo. So, pag ganun yung scenario, or actually, yung gano'n, no? Hindi siya separate na entity, kaya lang considered siya as a separate vehicle. Kaya nga, yung separate vehicle, pwedeng recognized under the law yan, recognized as a separate entity or not. Kasi nga, mas malawak yung coverage ng separate vehicle. Ngayon, dito sa dalawa, no? Dito sa dalawa, alin kaya dito yung structured through a separate vehicle? Is it the joint operation or yung joint venture? So, alin dito yung structured through a separate vehicle? Structured through a separate vehicle. Answer. Okay, pag separate vehicle yung pinag-usapan, itong joint operation, this can be structured through a separate vehicle or not. Okay? Pero para mas siguro hindi mahaba yung sinusulat natin, okay, ilagay ko na lang na with or without separate vehicle. Yung point ko lang dito is, it is either structured through a separate vehicle or not. Samantalang, pag joint venture, okay, this should be always structured through a separate vehicle. So, para maikse yung sinusulat natin with separate vehicle. Ganun na lang. Okay? So, ganito, no? Kung titingnan mo, with, merong separate vehicle, okay, merong separate vehicle either. So, kung structured yan through a separate vehicle, either it can be a joint operation or it can be a joint venture. Pero pag walang na-set up, na-structured, na-separate vehicle, automatic yan, that would fall under yung joint operation. That would fall under yung joint operation. Okay, so pwedeng ganito din yung itsura niya, no? So, kunyari, you have party number 1, party number 2, okay? They established a separate vehicle. Okay? So, party number 1, party number 2, kunyari lang, So, they structured their arrangement through a separate vehicle. So, ito na lang, i-compare natin yung dalawa. Kasi kung titingnan mo, yung with separate vehicle, di ba? Either, kahit saan mapunta. Unlike ito, na pag without separate vehicle, wala ka nang iisipin. Basta joint operation yan. So, what's the difference of these two? Okay, dito. Kailan ko masasabing joint operation yan? Kailan ko masasabi na joint venture yan kung merong separate vehicle na na-set up? So, ganito po, no? So, dito sa scenario ito, okay, so meron tayong party number 2, kaya lang, they, syempre, yung in-establish nila or yung separate vehicle na in-establish nila, okay, parang connected pa rin sa kanila. Connected pa rin sa kanila. Okay? So, in effect, or parang extension lang nila. Okay? Extension, hindi naman talaga hiwalay. Parang kanang kamay, kaliwang kamay. Hindi talaga hiwalay. Nakakabit pa rin. So, pag ganito yung scenario, okay, this is a good example of joint operation. Joint operation. So, magandang example ng joint operation yan, parang extension lang ng mga parties. Okay? Kaya lang kunyari, ganito yung scenario naman, may dalawang parties nag-set up ng structure, ng separate vehicle, kaya lang, yung separate vehicle, independent sa kanila. Independent sa kanila. Ibig sabihin, kung may asset siya, asset niya, kung may liability niya, then, this is a good example naman of joint venture. Joint venture. Okay? So, balikan natin. So, dito, parang extension mo lang. So, kung merong asset, yung separate vehicle na yan, posibleng asset ng mga parties. Kung may utang ito, utang ng mga parties. Eh, di ba? Pag may right to specific assets or obligation for specific liab, that would be classified as a joint operation. So, ganun na siya. Kung independent naman siya, okay, may sarili siyang buhay, di ba? May sarili siyang buhay, then, syempre, yung asset niya sa kanya, di ba? And yung liability niya sa kanya, so parang mangyayari, yung paghahatian na lang ng dalawang parties is dun sa, okay, net assets. Dito naman siya magpo-fall sa joint venture. So itong first na setup na ito, this is common sa, this is common. Parang yung itsura nito is parang partnership. Okay, so yung setup niya is, sabihin na lang natin, yung setup niya parang partnership. Tama ba? Eh kasi sa partnership, in the event of liquidation, kung hindi sapat yung assets ng partnership, pwedeng habulin yung mga parties. Parang ganun dito. Kasi, di ba, pwede mong habulin yung mga parties dito. Okay, sa kanila kasi yung assets. Eh, kung may utang din, sa kanila mo habulin. And normally, since partnership setup yan, okay, meron siyang unlimited liability na characteristic. Tama? So, unlimited liability na characteristic. Samantalang ito, parang setup naman ng corporation ito. So, corporation na setup naman ito na syempre, kung meron siyang asset sa kanya, kung meron siyang utang, kanya lang. Okay? So, generally, hindi mo pwedeng habulin yung mga parties. So, ito naman, limited liability na setup. So, limited liability. Okay? Limited liability. O, sige nga, recall natin. So, pag nabasa mo, the parties has rights to assets or obligation for liab, that's a joint operation. Okay? The parties has right to net asset. That is a joint venture. Okay? What if, sabi sa problem, sa multiple choice natin or multiple choice mo, na the entity has rights to asset and obligation for liab. So, what if ganon? What if ganon? The entity has rights to its assets and obligation to its liabilities. Ano yon? May nakita ang rights to assets and obligation for liab. Ano po yon? Is that a joint operation or joint venture? Answer. Is that a joint operation or joint venture? Answer po. Answer. Answer is very good. Answer is, okay, very good. Ayun. So, hindi porket may nakita kang rights to assets or obligation for liab, iisipin mo, joint operation yan. No. No. Okay? Kasi yung binanggit ko, the entity has rights to its assets and obligation for liab. That's actually a joint venture. Kaya yung instructions ko sa inyo kanina, you need to underline yung parties. Parties. Yung parties, yung may right to asset and obligation for liab. Pero, kung sinabi niya, the entity, maybe, yung entity na tinutukoy is yung separate vehicle, the entity has rights to its asset. Okay, yung asset niya, di ba? Yung liability niya, obligasyon niya. Then, syempre, that's your joint venture. Okay, so yun lang yung gusto kong i-note ninyo kasi baka doon kayo malito, especially pag theories yung mga question. Okay, ngayon, ano yung mga additional na consideration? Okay, additional consideration. O sige, ganito, no? In identifying whether there is a joint control, diba? So, ito yung mga tinitingnan natin. Unanimous consent of relevant activities. Relevant activities. So, magbigay lang ako ng scenario. Okay? So, ito na lang muna, no? So, kunyari lang, at least, kasi, at least 2 or more. Or 2 or more, sorry. Or at least 2. Ngayon, assuming na lang, there are 2 parties in an arrangement. Ilang percent po dapat yung hawak nila? There are 2 parties in an arrangement. Ilang percent dapat yung hawak nila? Ilang percent dapat yung hatian nila? Answer? Ilang percent dapat yung hatian? Answer? Answer is very good. Okay? 50%. 50%, 50%. Now, what if there are 3 parties in one arrangement? Tig-ilang percent sila? Tig-ilang percent? Tig-ilang percent? Okay, so yung isa, 50%, the other one is 30%, and the third one, okay, should have 20%. Next, what if there are 3? There are 4 naman ngayon, 4. There are 4 parties, tig-ilang percent sila? Okay, tig-ilang percent po sila? Answer. So, syempre, although hindi perfect yung drawing natin, so yung isa, 30%, the other one is 30%, and then the other 2 is 20%. 20%. Okay? 20%. And pag 5 sila, okay, tig-ilang percent dapat yung hawak nila? Yung isa ay 20, yung isa 30, yung isa 20, okay? Yung isa ay 10, yung isa ay 10, yung isa ay, 30, 20, 10, 60 yun, no? 60. Yung isa ay 10, and yung isa ay 20. Ayun. So, medyo mahirap i-memorize, no? So, syempre, kahit na mahirap, you need to memorize. You need to memorize. Okay? Kaya lang, syempre, joke lang yan. Kalimutan mo yan. Okay? Kalimutan mo yan. So, yung gusto nating i-note or i-point out is pwedeng magkaroon ng control, joint control, even if you don't have equal interest. Okay? So, you can have a joint control kahit na meron pong, okay, kahit na magkakaiba yung interest mo. No? So, hindi necessary na equal lagi. Okay? So, pwedeng 40-60, pwede yun. Diba? Pwedeng 50-30-20, pwede pa rin magkaroon ng joint control. What's important is ito. Wala namang sinabi na dapat equal yung ownership para magkaroon ng joint control. So with that, magbibigay tayo ng example. So for example, ganito po. There are 3 parties. 3 parties ABC, kunyari. There are 3 parties. Okay, yung percentage of ownership nila is, sige, baguhin natin. So, scenario na lang. Okay. So, ganito na lang. So, minimum voting requirement. So, minimum voting requirement to direct yung relevant activities at least 75%. Kunyari, yan yung scenario. O yan yung kailangan. So, kunyari lang, 3 lang sila para mas madali. So, A, B, C. And dun sa first scenario, assuming ownership of A is 50, B is 30%, and then hawak nila lahat yung joint arrangements for a total of 100. So pag ganito yung scenario, no? Okay, sino kaya sa mga parties yung may chance na may joint control dun sa arrangement? Sino kaya sa mga parties? Kung titingnan natin, 50 plus 20, masasatisfy ba? Hindi. 50 plus 30, pwede bang masatisfy? Yes, 80% na. How about yung 3? Definitely, no? Kaya lang syempre, at a minimum, okay, sino lang sa kanila yung pwede? Diba? Or yung kayang mag-satisfy doon sa 75. So, pwede na itong si A and B. Kaya sino may joint control dyan? So, most likely si A at saka si B. Most likely A at saka si B. Another possible scenario. So, say for example, this is 50%, this is 25%, this is 25%, that's the total of yung 100%. Okay. Sino kaya yung pwedeng magkaroon ng joint control assuming may contract sila? So, AB, pwede ba? Yes, at least. So, 75 or more. Okay. AC, pwede ba? Actually, yes. ABC, pwede ba? Yes. Okay. Kaya lang, kung titingnan natin, there are two possible combination that can satisfy itong requirement. Pwedeng A and B, pwedeng A and C. Okay, so sa ganitong scenario, okay, hindi natin malaman, no, kung yan lang nakikita mo, kung sinong may joint control. So, anong gagawin nila? Dapat ilagay nila sa agreement kung sino yung magsasatisfy, kaninong combination yung kailangan, okay, para dito sa 75. So, kung nilagay is combination ng A and B, then ito yung may joint control. Kung pinag-agrihan naman is combination of A and C, then sila dapat yung merong joint control. Okay? And, sige, last na lang. So, say for example, this is 50, this is 30, and walang ownership ito. Walang ownership yan. Yung remaining 20%, ilagay ko na lang dito, widely dispersed. Kalat-kalat. Hawak ng mga ibang investor. So, pag ganito yung scenario, okay, so 50 plus 30, kayang-kaya nila. Tapos ito, kalat-kalat pa. Most likely, okay, although pwedeng hindi, so mataas yung chance na ito yung may joint control. Kasi kung titingnan natin yung remaining 20%, okay, kalat-kalat, di ba? So medyo malabo na magkaroon sila ng bosses, no? Okay, kaya lang again, no, it would depend dun sa mga agreement. Pero pag ito lang yung nakikita natin, okay, we can say na itong dalawa, meron na silang joint control. So again, yung reminder dito is yung ano na yan, yung anong tawag na ito? Yung. Okay. So ito na mismo yan, no? Pwedeng magkaroon ng joint control kahit na walang equal na ownership. So kahit walang equal ownership, you can have joint control. Now, ganito. Posible bang magkaroon ng control, joint control, and significant influence at the same time sa isang company, isang entity? Is that possible? May control, may joint control, and may significant influence doon sa isang company. Pwede bang magkaroon ng ganon? Answer is yes. It's possible. It is possible. Kunyari lang, ito, 50%. Although, syempre, hindi pasok sa rebuttable presumption natin. Sige, para mas masaya. 51 na lang. Mas 19. So, assuming ganyan yung scenario. So, yung 51%, kunyari, hawak lang ng isa to, then, okay, ano yung presumption natin dito sa 51%? May control. Di ba? May control yung investor niya yan. So, ito namang 30%, yung presumption natin is merong, okay, significant influence. Tapos itong remaining 90%, this can be subject to joint control. Kaya lang, medyo malabong magkaroon ka na ng control dito kasi 19% lang. Okay? So, ganun. Now, pwede bang makontrol yung isang asset? O, pwede bang subject to joint control yung isang asset? Okay? Pwede bang subject to joint control yung isang asset? Answer. Subject to joint control yung isang asset? Answer is yes. Answer is yes. Okay? So, paano yun? Okay. So, kasi nga kanina, no, sabi natin, J ka at saka J ko, under ng JO yan, joint operation. So, kunyari lang, no? Dalawa kayong magkapatid. So, panganay, bunso, walang kitna. Okay. Tapos, merong gusali, yung pamilya ninyo, na 3 stories. 3 stories. Okay? Ngayon, sabi ng magulang ninyo, since dalawa lang kayo, tapos 3 yung gusali, at 3 palapag yung gusali, okay, ikaw na panganay, ikaw na lang itong first floor. Sa'yo na lang ito. So, syempre, pag binigay sa'yo yan, sa'yo na lang ito, ikaw bahala kung ano yung gusto mong gawin dyan. So, syempre, kontrolado ito ni panganay. Ikaw naman na bunso, ikaw naman yung second floor. So, kung gusto mong gawing canteen yan, gusto mong gawing gym yan, so, ikaw na bahala. Kontrolado naman ito ni bunso. Kaya lang, since meron pang isang floor, so, syempre, okay, sa inyo na lang dalawa, panganay and bunso. So, syempre, this will be subject to your joint control. So kung ano yung gagawin nyo dyan, kailangan ng decision ng dalawang magkapatid. So ito yung pwedeng masubject to joint control kasi nga jointly controlled asset. Samantalang yung mga first and second floor, kung ano yung gusto mong gawin dyan, then wala kang problema. Or kunyari dito, okay, kung gustong nag-decide si panganay na i-demolish yung first floor, walang magagawa si bunso. Diba? Pero paano kaya yun? Anyway, gano'n, no? Pwede yan. Jointly controlled asset. And mamaya, titingnan din natin yung jointly controlled operations. Okay? So, yun yung mga other na considerations, no? And yung iba, we will discuss that. So, let's discuss that in a while. So, let's erase first this, para may space tayo. So, let's wipe it down. Wipe. Okay,